Tucker Hebert. Welcome to the Path to Fall podcast.
Coach Scott, excited to be on. Am I the first student on this?
You're the first student on here.
Honored.
It's been
very honored.
Yeah. Well, you're the school president, right?
I am.
Not the class president. You're the school president.
I am the school president. Yeah.
So tell me about that. What's that been like this year in such a bizarre situation? Now you're the school president. What's working? How are you making it happen?
It's definitely a lot different than years past, obviously, like most things during this weird year. So usually in years past, the president's been kind of the focal point of the student body. So he's leading the assemblies, organizing the dances, our all school events, and obviously just being online and not really being able to gather in person. It's definitely been a challenge to kind of find ways to like continue to lead the school and be that kind of just leader of the student body. So I've really just been trying to find ways that I can kind of do my role as president just from my house, basically. So whether that's trying to, like the food drive, for example, whether that's just sending out reminders all the time, or helping organize that through emails and just a lot of Zooms with the student council, trying to get that involved, and then just trying to find ways to kind of keep the student body motivated. So
that's got to be tough right now, right?
Yeah. So at last year, that was probably the toughest thing about the spring. Just everyone kind of had a lack of motivation, and it just not being able to see each other was really hard. So this year, being on campus obviously helps a couple days a week, but it really just trying to keep the community engaged. Like earlier in the year, we did a little for the Ravens-Chiefs game. We did a kind of pick-em style giveaway. So if you guessed the score of the Ravens-Chiefs game, if you got the correct score, you won a gift card. So trying to do little things like that to kind of keep everyone motivated and trying to fun ways to keep the Gilman community alive a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great idea. But certainly way different from years past, because the school president at Gilman, and I learned this my first year here. I was the president of my class in high school too, and it wasn't anywhere near the responsibility you have as the leader of Gilman. And like I remember, like you run the assemblies, you organize all the major events, you work with the administration on planning certain things, a lot of spirit and organizing, like student sections and everything. What made you why'd you want to become the school president? It's a lot on your back when you're trying to get into college and do your work and, have an enjoyable senior year. It's a lot more work. Why'd you want to do that?
Yeah, it definitely took a lot of thought into kind of, do I want to take on kind of that burden and that the time commitment that it takes to be the student body president. From talking to the past presidents, either like Paul or Quinn or Piper, just seeing how much work they put into it, and along with writing college applications and kind of the senior workload of the fall, that I really want to take that on. And really, I didn't know that I really wanted to run until probably a month or two before we had to let, I think Miss Fuller know that we're going to run for student body president. And it was really just a kind of a collective of things. So I just thought that, freshman year and sophomore year, I was part of the student council. So I was freshman class treasurer and then sophomore class president. So I'd been around the student council meetings, so I kind of knew what that looked like and kind of the inner workings of the presidency. So I saw what really they did behind the scenes with the student council. So I thought I could do a good job as the president. I saw, I knew what I could do and kind of how to do it, and really good another I don't want to spoil senior retreat, but that definitely was an encouraging experience for me, just getting to know some of the older guys, kind of their encouragement a little bit to the seniors from last year.
Oh, so you were a junior on that?
I was a junior on senior retreat.
So I went on retreat my first year here, and there are a lot of juniors there. Why do they invite juniors? What's the purpose behind that?
So the purpose for that is, they invite juniors on senior retreat. I think it's probably anywhere between 10 to 16. And their goal is kind of to experience retreat so they can lead it the following year. So last year, myself and I think 11 other kids went on senior retreat, and our goal was to lead it this year. Obviously, it's been postponed to the spring. but really just to kind of get a learning experience, and try to learn from senior retreat to make it special for our class.
So for people who don't know about senior retreat, what is that experience like? I know we take buses and we go. I don't even know where it was my first year, and I don't know anything about Maryland.
We
coming
go out
down
to
here. We go
Frederick,
far out there.
Frederick, Maryland. I don't want to give away too much because senior retreat's supposed to be kind of a special, secretive experience.
It is. Yep.
But really, it's just kind of a time for your class to come together in your last year. Really, it's when you're really able to get to know your class, every individual in your class. So it's really kind of just a bonding experience to bring your class together before you guys head off to college.
Yeah, it was pretty special, and I hope that you guys get the chance to do that in the spring. But it was a cool experience getting to see different sides of some people that you might not hear from or know that well in your class, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what was your campaign like to run for the president? Like, how does that go down at Gilman? Because I know from my experience, like I remember putting up flyers around the school, and we actually didn't give a speech, which is kind of absurd that I didn't have to give a speech and I was running for president. But what was that like for you here?
Well, we were online, so that kind of threw another challenge into it.
It's a brand new skill set you had to.
I know. So a lot of it was just kind of campaigning through underclassmen. So I'd send a text to some underclassmen that I'm close with, try to get the word out. And I think really campaigning just for me kind of started since freshman year, just getting to know guys. I think probably my biggest strength is just being able to build relationships with people. So I just think through the relationships I've built with guys through being in the class or on the sports field definitely helped me. Just getting to know them, and then also just being vocal when like around the campus. I mean, just kind of before lockdown, just kind of being a figure in my class. I mean, people knew me just because of being like sophomore president or just going to sports games. So I think just trying to be just being a representative of your class definitely helped me, so people just knew who I was. I mean, a lot of that I feel like has to do with becoming school president here. It's just kind of name recognition. Do people know you?
Right.
So I think just getting the word out through underclassmen, and I sent a couple of things out on like Snapchat to like vote for me. So just using social media.
Snapchat, huh?
Snapchat, yeah.
Is that? I wouldn't think of Snapchat as almost like a campaign device to think of Instagram, right? And when I was in high school, probably Facebook was more popular. Now, I don't think any of you guys even probably have a Facebook, right?
No, I did not.
Snapchat, okay. And I know TikTok, and I remember last year I was teaching my class and everyone was like, yeah, we don't even like barely go on Instagram. It's all TikTok.
I'm not that. I'm not there. No? I'm not on the TikTok phase yet.
Okay.
I didn't know campaigning over TikTok, no like dances to campaign.
Yeah. I mean, that could be smart.
Maybe next year.
Whoever's on the rise.
Juniors listen up, maybe use TikTok.
Yeah.
But no TikTok, really just Snapchat and Instagram, just ways of communication.
How are you? What devices or apps are you using to communicate with your grade right now? Like, if you had a message for everyone, how are you touching base with the seniors and really the entire upper school? What are you doing there?
So really the main thing is we made a class of 2021 Instagram page. So that's really our main way of communication. So on that, we've used it to promote like the food drive, toy drive, and then also announce college decisions. I mean, because I know students and parents love looking at that. So we've been using that a lot, just through posts or Instagram stories, and then just through email. I mean, now students are kind of required to check their email very frequently. So
yeah, you have to.
So that's definitely been our main form of communication.
Okay, that's cool. And then you have the college thing going on too. How's that process been for you? I know we had Miss Follansby on yesterday talking about all that goes into that for seniors, and it's a lot of pressure and a lot of essay writing and a lot of visiting schools, and especially now it's such a curveball with COVID and how you go about finding the right place for you, and sometimes you can't even get onto campus. How was your college What's that been like for you?
It's definitely been different. So, I mean, I feel like I'm more fortunate than a lot of other of my classmates. So, being the youngest of three boys, I was obviously dragged around to so many colleges when I was younger. So I was really able to see a lot of the schools that I probably wouldn't have been able to see this year just with everything going on. But it's definitely been a different experience. So, I think the biggest thing for most students is just how many schools have gone test optional. So a lot of schools aren't requiring you to submit an ACT or SAT, and some schools even tell you not to. Like if you send it in, they're not even going to look at it. So I feel like that's definitely been probably the biggest positive out of the situation. Definitely relieves a lot of stress from the students. But then, I mean, on the other side of that, it kind of makes your essays more important. So maybe students are spending more time on essays and their writing instead of doing test prep. And that was definitely just trying to prioritize some writing over the summer, because I knew coming into this fall, definitely being president, and with sports, I know that was still up in the air, but I knew that I was not going to have too much free time to kind of mess around and write all my essays 3 weeks before the deadline.
Yep.
And obviously to give Miss Fonsby a break, and so she doesn't have to read all my essays right before the deadline. Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge for me, just trying to be proactive and get those done with some time remaining.
Well, that's smart, because you never know in this situation what the future holds. And we say that with lacrosse too. Like, guys on the lacrosse team, if you're kind of just sitting around right now and expecting no season, right, all of a sudden it's going to be February 30th or March 1st or whatever, and they're going to say, all right, we have games. And if you're not in shape and you're not ready to go, that proactive, that's a skill that was probably pretty wise of you, and you're probably happy about now that.
Well, I mean, it was a skill, but a little more push from my parents also.
Okay.
Obviously, a little nagging from them helps.
Yeah, for sure. That's always good. And from teachers too.
And teachers, of course, yeah.
So the essay, and I've talked to some of the seniors that I teach, and every week they'd say, I have another essay due, and it's a different one. It's not like you can use the same essay for every school. It's all of these schools expect you to write different essays. How did you manage that whole process in terms of one school wants you to write about this, and then like, were you able to use one single essay and recraft it for a different school, or did you write brand new essays for each?
Yeah. So most schools have a couple of supplemental essays. So usually they'll have a couple options you can choose from. And usually those are anywhere from 250 words to 600 word limits. And I think...
Oh, so that's not that bad. 250 words. I mean, you can...
Yeah, you can crank that out pretty quickly. But those actually do require a good amount of thought, because, I mean, the challenge is trying to present yourself and show who you are in such a few amount of words. So that does kind of cause you to think a little bit more about that. But I really did just try to find ways to reuse essays that I've written already, trying to kind of reword them or reshape them to fit different schools. Like for my University of Virginia essay, I had to write... I did a 250 word. I talked about this poem we read in World War I, and I just tried to use that in as many different essays as I could, because I thought it was a good essay. So I used that in my U of R application, University of Richmond, and also in my University of Michigan essay. So I just tried to kind of use that essay and build around it for different word limits. So I think my U of R essay was like 650 words. So I had to add like 400 words around it. So it's really just kind of building that puzzle of your essay, and just trying to really just save as much time. And if you have a good essay, I feel like it's beneficial to use it multiple times.
Was that Mr. Hudson's class?
It was Mr. Hudson's class.
Rupert Brooke, maybe?
It was Wilfred Owen.
Oh, cool.
Dulce et decorum est.
All right. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a tough process to balance and figure all of that out, but it sounds like you did a pretty good job with it. If you had, for juniors that are coming up and starting to think about this, and even, I'm sure sophomores, or maybe it's in their brain somewhere, like colleges in the future, is there anything that you would maybe say in terms of not only just being proactive, but all that goes into this, fall and early winter of senior years? Anything that you would recommend or suggest for them to do?
Definitely do so. I mean, I think their experience could be so much different than mine, just with how the world is. But I think just really trying to just do your research on a college before you select. So I think just really digging in. I know for me, I did so many like virtual tours online, which is really helpful, just being online.
What were those like, the virtual tours?
It was weird. I mean, so a lot of them, they were really cool. I mean, they're super interactive. So like you just basically like being on Google Maps, but they had little pop-ups that would tell you about different buildings and different courses and subjects. And I think really just doing your research on those and trying to find the place that fits you the best. And I think really just talking to other people. So, I mean, my brothers, just having been through the process themselves and with their friends, they were definitely probably the biggest help to me on trying to find places that I could see myself and where they could see me. So I think reaching out to people, whether they're alumni or currently attending the school, is definitely beneficial to finding your place.
Yeah, having brothers, I'm sure that was helpful because they know you really well and they can say, Tucker, like, come on, you're not gonna like this type of environment.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was definitely kind of helpful for leading me in the right direction.
When you were visiting with your brothers, we talked about this with Miss Follinsby yesterday, but did you have like a certain feeling on a campus that I can totally see myself here? Because we said that was probably the most important part when you're visiting colleges. It's just the feeling that you get, and it's like, wow, this is a cool place. And it might not be a top whatever school that you have that feeling. It could be a total shock to you that, oh, I really like Michigan State. It's beautiful here. It's like, I feel like this town's pretty cool. I can see myself in that bookstore, that cafe. I could study. Like, it's kind of that vibe that you might get. Did you have that as a young? I don't know, how old are your brothers? Are they?
They're 3 and 5 years older than me, so I was probably in like 8th grade.
So you probably would have had this that type of feeling when you were visiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was visiting schools with them, usually it's just on our like road trips up to Massachusetts for vacation. So we stopped at I don't know how many northeastern schools, but definitely I could tell when I got on campus, like I could see myself here, even at such a young age. I mean, just looking at all the facilities and just hearing from being on the tours, I could definitely get that feeling. And I was also fortunate enough to look at some schools before lockdown. So just utilized a couple of long weekends to get down to some Virginia schools and help. And I mean, just being on that campus, definitely get that feeling of I could see myself here, or I don't want to be here at all.
Right, for sure. And so I'm not really as familiar with the virtual tours. I don't even know what those are like, but can you kind of get that sense on the virtual setup?
More or less. I mean, obviously, you can't really get like. Yeah, I mean, they're as good as they can be, really. I mean, being on campus, obviously, I'd prefer to do that because you can't really get the feel of like, I don't know, it's kind of indescribable just being on the campus and seeing the student body walk around you. And
yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, it's the same as like this type of conversation versus the conversations I have with guys on Zoom. It's just not the same thing.
Not
right?
the same at all.
There's an energy it emits for you.
Yeah.
Cool. So I would say your essays, I mean, I haven't read your essays, but I would say they're pretty good based off the senior speech I heard you give. That was really well done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Maybe you can kind of, people who didn't get the opportunity to check that out, what was that senior speech like, and maybe your process in writing that and trying to figure out what you wanted to write about for that?
Definitely a challenge. So I can say that was the first ever Gilman virtual senior speech. So I think just presenting it was definitely just super unique, being in the auditorium with only Mr. Ledyard, Mr. Hubeck, Mr. Daly, and my family. And then just writing it, it took me so long to think about what to write about. I probably wrote three different drafts of topics, and really my main speech, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I wrote like 2 days before, because the other ones that I wrote I just thought were terrible and didn't get my message across. So I wrote about, my speech was about my time in South Africa when I did the exchange program through Gilman, and kind of comparing that to the isolation that I felt with quarantine. So my first 2 weeks there, obviously being in a completely different country with different people, definitely was challenging. And so I talked about feeling that isolation there, not knowing anyone, and then being trapped in my house the following spring, and kind of not interacting with any of my good friends, and being not missing the Gilman community a lot. And so that was really the main purpose of my essay, or my speech, just trying to kind of portray that. And I just felt that that was the best use of the speech compared to the other drafts that I wrote.
Yeah. Well, you could, especially last spring, you kind of had to tie everything into, and now too, but tie it into the situation we're currently facing, right? I mean, the old world in a sense is like in the past and hopefully in the near future, but we're in something bizarre and that has never happened before. So even though you wrote your speech like a couple days before you gave it, it's totally fitting to the situation, and it makes sense, right? That isolated feeling when you're in a new country.
Exactly. And just missing the Gilman community was really the main theme of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone felt that last spring, and it's definitely something that I felt last summer, or 2 summers ago.
So that was sophomore year when you
after sophomore year.
So what made you choose South Africa? Why'd you want to go there?
So that was one of the options they gave us. So I think we either could have. I think for sophomores, the only exchange we could have gone on was to South Africa. I've just always thought, had a kind of fascination with history, especially like colonial history. So learning about South Africa through Mr. Hudson's class sophomore year, and that kind of inspired me to go on the retreat or go on the exchange. And then also talking to William Rice, the boy who went on the exchange the previous year, learning about his experience. I mean, it just sounded like a kind of once in a lifetime opportunity.
Were you able to get over that initial isolation?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously first couple weeks were obviously a little hard, just trying to make new friends and get to know people. I mean, just literally being the only American in, I don't know, thousands of miles basically. Right. But I mean, it was probably the most unbelievable experience of my life, just being able to meet and become friends with guys from completely different backgrounds than mine. I mean, after my first 2 weeks, it was so much fun getting to know the guys there. And
when you first got there, were there like cultural shocks for you, or things that you were like, this is so bizarre coming from America, that this is, people do things that much differently in South Africa?
For sure. So I think the biggest thing for me was just kind of the subcultures within Cape Town. So Cape Town's a super diverse city. And I remember kind of my first couple days there, talking to my friend Peter, and his phone rings, picks up the phone. He's like, sorry, my mom's calling, answers it, and then just starts talking a completely different language. And I'm just like, whoa, what is that? Like, what's going on? And so I think that, I mean, Cape Town, they have Afrikaners, which are kind of Dutch heritage. So they speak in, I think South Africa has probably 11 different national languages. So, I mean, just being around so many different cultures and languages and hearing that all around me was definitely a big shock. Probably one of the coolest things out of it, though, just being able to learn from all those things.
Absolutely, especially if you like history and you like culture. And the food probably was much different.
Yeah,
right?
Food very different.
How'd you find? What were some things you found in common with the people there?
I think just the high school boys are basically the same. I mean, unlike the school that I went to is a huge sports school, so they're super into rugby, and definitely could draw some parallels to so South African high school rugby is probably like Texas football. So like everyone goes out to it, massive fans and stadiums, and I would say just the boys there. I mean, you could place them into Gilman and they'd fit in perfectly. I mean, just seeing their personalities, and that was probably the biggest. That was another culture shock, just kind of how surprisingly similar the boys there were to the Gilman boys here.
Interesting how the shock was the similarities between you. That's awesome. Well, that sounds like a perspective shaping experience for you. And you said that was half a year? Was that a full year?
No, so it was just a couple months in the summer.
Just a couple months in summer?
Yeah.
Okay. I've always wanted to be one of the chaperones that they go over with the students, and then you're just kind of on your own, and then you fly home.
Exactly, yeah. I went with Miss Louver, and I think she flew down with me and then left 2 days later. And the flight was think 27 hours.
Really?
So,
She didn't hang out.
No, I mean, good for her for being able to withstand 2 long flights
Man,
within a week.
I couldn't do that.
I know.
Wow, so that's pretty cool. So Gilman School, you've been here pretty much. Have you been here your whole life?
I came in 9th grade. I went to Calvert School before.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about Calvert. What was that? How did that experience at Calvert set you up well for Gilman?
I would say, I mean, I don't. People like to rag on Calvert a little bit.
Really?
It's kind of a joke within Gilman, just all these Calvert kids.
It's a lot of Calvert kids come to Gilman. That's
I think we had 19 kids in my class,
main feeder,
which is just kind of an outrageous number.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing that Calvert prepared me for was the academics at Gilman. I mean, Calvert's kind of known to be a pretty rigorous middle and elementary school. I mean, we learned cursive like right when we got there. So it's really the discipline and kind of work ethic that goes with being a Gilman student kind of was instilled in me at Calvert, with writing and papers and just overall academics. That's probably the biggest thing that Calvert prepared me for coming into high school.
So when you came in 9th grade, it wasn't too much of a adjustment for you?
No, not at all.
Fit right in and already started to love what Gilman had to offer?
Yeah. I mean, and obviously having older brothers that went here.
Yeah.
Again, going back to that, that's definitely
huge.
helped. So, I mean, although I've been at Gilman for 4 years, I've really been in the community for a while, just coming to all my brother's sports games or just different events here.
Gotcha. And were your brothers lacrosse players too?
One play, I mean, semi. I mean, they weren't too serious with lacrosse.
Yeah.
And Clayton, my middle brother, had a shoulder issue, so he had to quit a couple years early.
So sports have always been a big part of your life,
Mm-hmm.
from your Calvert days through your Gilman senior year. What sports do you play? What do you do?
So I'm a soccer and lacrosse player. I was a brief stint on the squash team, but hung up the racket a couple of years ago.
It's a lifetime sport. You can always pick it back
exactly. Up. I know. I thought. I mean, I don't know how long we'll be able to play with soccer and lacrosse for, but I know squash will be in my back pocket for forever.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm the middle school squash coach with Coach
All
Emila.
right. Forgot about that. Yeah.
And I get in the court with some of these 6th graders, and I get run around and beat 0 to 11. So
it's a good time.
I'm always working to beat some of these middle school kids. But it's fun. Like I've played a lot. My dad plays, and yeah, squash is a great sport.
Mm-hmm.
But how have sports kind of factored into your life? Are there, any experiences that come to mind at Gilman that are special to you as a senior in terms of your lacrosse and soccer careers here?
Absolutely. I mean, sports have always been a major part of my life, just playing club and rec throughout my childhood and up till now. And at Gilman, I mean, I think I've loved being a part of every team here. I mean, lacrosse, obviously, last year was a pretty big bummer, just with our season being cut short.
For sure.
But soccer last year was so much fun and so enjoyable, just being a part of kind of the varsity team. And I mean, being in the playoffs was just the playoff atmosphere Gilman in the MIAA just has unbelievable student sections, and there's such a competitive atmosphere here. And I think that just heightens the experience completely. It just makes it so much more fun and enjoyable and competitive. And then
that might be one of the best things about Gilman and the MIAA is, if you play sports here, you're in one of the most competitive leagues in the country, even in college. And like when guys, obviously when you're in high school, you want to go to the next level, you want to play college. But I think to some degree, you don't realize that it might not get much better than this.
Exactly.
Like my games in college, people were leaving. It was too cold. The lacrosse was, so-so. Lacrosse here, like we pack these stands. We have people on the hill. I'm sure the same is for soccer too. Like everyone comes out. Baltimore's a small town.
Exactly.
It doesn't get much better.
It doesn't.
Than
I mean,
whenever
I talk to someone who's not from Baltimore and they ask what sports like and like what's the most exciting sport, I say volleyball, and they're all shocked. But I mean, volleyball in the MIAA is such a big deal. I mean, just getting everyone over the old gym and kind of the acoustics in there just really make the experience kind of unbelievable. I mean, that was probably the biggest bummer, just not being able to go to volleyball games this fall.
Yeah, student section there. And it's just that sport just is the perfect, and I don't know much about volleyball, but just it's like one play after another, and like you can Like if you have a spike in one play, the place erupts and then you're back into it.
Exactly. Again. Yeah. So it's I don't know to describe. It's indescribable how exciting volleyball can be. I mean, usually people would be like, "Oh, why would you play volleyball? That's so weird, like volleyball." But I mean, you really got to experience it to believe it.
Yeah, I remember walking into that old gym my first year here. I was like, "Whoa, this is pretty cool!" Like both sides going at it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So how about some coaches or some like maybe some role models for you as you've coming through Gilman in terms of just sports right now? But like, is there anyone kind of affected you and helped you develop as an athlete?
I mean, absolutely. I think all my coaches have really helped me as an athlete. I mean, I think Coach Nostrand, especially these past 2 years, him being there just with the whole college process, helping me out with that. And then just kind of, I know last year, every Wednesday morning in the fall, we do morning workouts as a lacrosse team. And I mean, that was kind of his role, and also with the seniors last year. I think just kind of teaching that work ethic and kind of just showed me that to really get the most out of your spring, you got to put in the work in the fall. And kind of just come together as a team so early on in the school year to really kind of push for our goals in May. That's probably the biggest thing I took away from him and my varsity experience last year.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. What we were trying to do in the fall in the mornings was just get the guys together. If nothing else, you're working out together and getting to know each other.
Exactly.
And identifying some leaders and, figure out who's pushing themselves in the off season. That's what that's all about. It's not like, we're putting in plays or running drills or anything. We're just doing a workout. And it doesn't matter what it is. If we're playing pickup basketball, it's like this guy wants to win. Like we can identify that. So
exactly, yeah.
That's something that we've been missing a little bit this year.
I know.
I really enjoyed doing that too.
I know.
In the morning.
I mean, I had one little car accident going to practice one time last fall, but
you still got there though, right?
I did get there. 10 minutes late. Backed into my uncle's car, but
that's commitment right there. That's good. Awesome. So the kind of the essence of the podcast is path to follow, and like I just look around at Gilman and see so many passionate people, whether it's coaches like Coach Matthews, Coach Nostrand, Coach Seal, Coach Gulin, Coach Emla, like all these coaches here, and teachers too, right? Everyone is just super passionate about what they teach, what they coach, even advisory. Like Coach Hudson was in here talking about how valuable his advisees are to him. Who are some of kind of the role models that have made this experience at Gilman unique or special to you? And you can't really name everyone because everyone is passionate, but is there anyone that comes to mind with that question about like who is like truly passionate here at Gilman in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously too many names to count. I feel like every member of the staff and faculty here love Gilman and are passionate about what they teach or what they do. I'll probably say the first one comes to mind is Mr. Hastings. So I'm currently in his Ulysses class.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you had him on the podcast talk about Ulysses.
Yep.
And I did not know anyone could be as kind of passionate into a book as confusing and as hard as Ulysses than Mr. Hastings. I mean, his dedication to it. I mean, he made his own website about it. He's writing his own book about it. I mean, really, it's his dedication and passion to the subject is unbelievable.
Yep.
Another one is Mr. Hudson, like you mentioned. I already had him on the podcast as well. So, I mean, I'm kind of a history nerd. So being in his class this year and sophomore year, I've enjoyed every part about it. I mean, he just knows the material so well and loves teaching it. And like World War I is probably one of my favorite classes I've ever had here.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, those are probably two that come to mind.
For sure. Yeah. How's that Ulysses class going for you? That's
It's a tough book to get through. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean,
you have the expert right there.
That's what makes it kind of bearable. Just having him kind of guide us through the book. I mean, his website that he made is so in depth into.
Do you use that as a resource as a student? All the time.
All the time. You have to.
So do you just read the like his explanation of it and then read, or do you?
So I usually read Ulysses first. I mean, I try to get through it, even though I understand probably like 30% of what's going on, and then really going through his reading guides on the website helped me understand it better, and helps. He really like points out specific passages or different instances that I should really pick up on while I read.
How does he go about a class discussion about that text? Because it's so difficult. I mean, like you might pick up one paragraph and really connect with it and understand it, and I don't even know what that's talking about. I don't even know what that's saying. How does he get everyone involved with that, you know?
Yeah, so I mean that's really what he does. He tells us, we go into class and really is like, is there anything interesting or something that you think we should talk about? And I think just with a book like that, so many people are able to pull out so many different aspects or instances from that book that we're really able to have a beneficial discussion about the whole like section that we're reading. So one person might pick up something about like Bloom's walk or where he's going, and someone might pick up something completely different. And I think that really just helps build kind of a good discussion and a good basis for the class.
Yeah, it's such a difficult book. I remember reading it in college, like during lacrosse season, and it just takes so much time. Like,
it's a time commitment.
You have to invest in it. And Mr. Baker actually is reading it right now after watching Mr. Hastings on the podcast talk about it. But he's flying through it. It takes a lot of time. Like you have to, if you want to read that book, you have to be serious about it.
I know, and it gets exhausting at times. I mean, just not really. I think the biggest thing for me is just kind of the frustration with it, just not being able to kind of pick up on different things and different kind of, when he talks about like Aristotle or some subtle hints about stuff.
Yeah, all the allusions, right?
A lot of allusions and metaphors that I just don't really understand. But
like you have to be pretty well read in advance to reading that, you know? And I said this when Patrick was on the podcast, is like one of the first times I met him, he had Ulysses on his desk. And he was like, yeah, I want to read that book every day for the rest of my life. And I'm like,
I know.
This guy is serious about it.
I think he's
Ulysses.
read it like 19 times, 20 times, something ridiculous.
And he'll read it he teaches it, but he's reading it you walk by his office and he's reading it.
Yeah, you know? I mean, that's probably the biggest emphasis he puts on the book. He says it rewards rereading it because there's so many different little puzzles or things you can place together each time you read it. You pick up something new.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, and I think that's a perfect example of someone who's passionate. Like, imagine taking a class with a guy like that who's that passionate about it.
Exactly.
It's pretty rare.
That's probably the best thing about Gilman. I mean, just having that faculty and staff that are so dedicated to helping their students and into what they're teaching.
For sure. Excellent. So Tucker, you said you brought a book in, or you have a title that you would recommend to other people. Maybe it's not Ulysses, but you have something else that struck you when you first read it.
So Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Read that for summer reading and talked a lot about that this year in World War I. So I mean, like I said, I'm a big kind of history nerd. So I love all things related to World War I, World War II. Really any like military history is kind of my favorite thing to learn about.
Did you read this for Hudson's World War I class?
We did.
World War I class?
Yep.
Okay. That's a tough book too. I mean, for a lot of it, first of all, Hemingway, the language is so simple, and the relationship, what's her name again?
Catherine Barclay.
And
Frederick Henry, the two main characters.
It's really a love story, right?
Yeah, it is a love story.
About those two and their relationship during the war. He's an
ambulance driver.
And
she's a nurse. And so they meet before, in the beginning of the book, his friend takes him over to meet Miss Barclay, and then they kind of start this relationship. And then unfortunately he's injured by an artillery barrage, and so he's transported out to Milan, and then she's also transported to Milan as a nurse. So she takes care of him in Milan, and they kind of start this whole love story together. And that was probably the biggest. I was kind of surprised that we're reading a love story for World War I. But really it just shows kind of how war can affect everyone in different ways, and how these two characters are able to kind of try to maintain their love during such a dark time.
Yeah, it's like the only beautiful thing in their life, right? And the descriptions, as simple as Hemingway are beautiful too, even during the injuries and the deaths and the destruction. The way that's described, it's kind of it offsets the beauty of their relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
And ending is pretty tragic.
Yeah,
too,
very tragic ending.
But I'm glad that was a good. So did you talk about it at the beginning of the year in your World War
I
class?
We did. So we probably spent 2 or 3 weeks talking about the book, and we just go through kind of chapter by chapter talking about significant occurrences or with Hemingway there's just so much like symbolism and foreshadowing in that book. So trying to pick out different instances of that was definitely a really enjoyable experience.
Well, with his writing, it's all like the iceberg theory, right? He puts, the simple sentences, but there's a whole like psychological undercurrent throughout everything that he writes about. So you can definitely pick that apart.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, awesome. So we'll put that in there as a book recommendation. You think?
Yeah,
I think it works for anyone. Everyone should read it, right?
I enjoyed it. I hope other people would enjoy it too. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's what I'm really into. But I think that that's definitely a book I'd recommend, and definitely a class I'd recommend for juniors or underclassmen looking to fill up their senior schedule.
For sure. Coach Hudson, he's awesome.
Yep.
Were you able to go on one of his trips with him?
Unfortunately, I was not able to.
No.
I think I would have loved to, but with summer lacrosse, that kind of didn't let me. I would have loved to go on it last summer. I mean, it got canceled, but I think just with summer lacrosse, I would not have been able to.
Have you done much travel in Europe yet as a history guy?
I have not, no.
That's something to look forward to.
I know, exactly. Definitely want to do that. Travel abroad in college. Definitely want to do a semester there.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I actually always hated when people asked me this. And still, like, when people ask you, like, what are you going to do next? It's like, just let me enjoy my senior. But I'm curious because you've offered so much about history and you're interested in it. Is that something that you might want to study maybe? And I know, like, Mr. Scott, Coach Scott, I'm looking and trying to get into college now. I'm like not there yet, but is that something that's floating around in your head? I want to study history.
I think that's probably what path I want to go down in college. I mean, only issue is I don't really know what to do with that degree after college. So that's definitely something I want to take into account. But I mean, I've always had a love for history. That's definitely something I'm interested in.
Oh, I think you can do anything with history.
I hope so.
I have a friend I went to school with. He was a history major and he loved it, but he's like a shoe designer.
Oh, really?
And he started his own fashion company.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's really, I mean, you can, like, history or English or any liberal arts subject, the purpose of it is to enhance whatever it is you do when you get out. Because who knows what the world is going to look like when you go into school in 2021, you get out and it's 2025 or 2026. Everything might be different. But if you have that background in history, you can take that and apply it to whatever it is. And the thing about this guy, Sean McDonough, who's a lacrosse player too, studied history, but like he was always doing shoe drawings and it's a pretty cool side interest, So, you can balance the liberal arts with another passion that you have and fuse them together, create some type of talent stack, and it doesn't really matter, But I think if you're passionate about it,
I know. I mean,
you sound like you are.
That's definitely something I've always loved. So definitely interested in pursuing that in college.
How'd you first get into history? How'd you first know that you liked it?
It's probably just through movies. I mean, I love history movies, and like Band of Brothers, the HBO series is one of my favorites. Movies like Saving Private Ryan, 1917. Apocalypse Now. I mean, all of those I just love. Oh,
so no wonder you love Hudson's class, because I know he shows good amount of movies.
Yeah. I think we watched They Shall Not Grow Old, which is kind of a documentary. That was really unbelievable documentary of World War I. So
it's like colorized,
exactly. Yeah. Kind of just restored footage from World War I. That was pretty amazing to see.
Oh, cool. So Tucker, class president, what and I know it's hard right now as we go into winter break, but what is your kind of read on your class and on the school, on the upper school right now, as we go into the rest of the year? Do you think how do you think guys are doing? And I just kind of want to get a sense from you as the school president, what the student vibe is, because I think I said it on a previous podcast. I come to school every day and it's like I get to go to my favorite class, my favorite subject. It's like you go into history, but everyone else is, they have 3 classes, got different things they're doing. They have the college. What do you think is working pretty well so far this year that we can continue to do, or maybe some things that can change throughout the rest of the year?
What's crack? I think the biggest thing, the students are kind of are struggling with is it's a little hard just to the hybrid learning. I mean, I think either just being online or being in person is definitely, I think, preferable. I know students kind of get bored of kind of come. A lot of students, like for me, example, I come into school, but I still have online classes, and that's kind of definitely a weird thing, just not being around kind of people. I mean, I have to sit in like a room by myself at school, and while I'm doing an online class, which is kind of,
It's definitely awkward.
yeah.
I just don't really know a way around that though, Like,
I know that's probably the biggest. I mean, a lot of the things that students would kind of complain about are kind of out of our control. Nothing we can do about it.
So let me just interrupt you there. Sorry. What teacher do you have that's doing like a really good job with this hybrid model? Because I know that everyone has a different system way of doing things. I have what you're talking about is like I have guys in the physical classroom, but they're still on Zoom because I have more guys on Zoom like streaming in. But I know Mr. Baker, obviously, like he'll do 35 minutes just with the physical. Sounds so weird. We're in such a weird time.
I know.
Physical students, and then he does like half the time with the virtual students.
I think going back to Mr. Hastings, so what we really do in class is we'll have probably 40, 45 minutes on Zoom. While he also has the people in class. So we set up the owl and we kind of just have our class discussion normally for like 40, 45 minutes. And then he lets the Zoom guys go early because, I mean, obviously being on Zoom for 70 minutes can be a little exhausting. And then we really just have kind of a conversation afterwards with the people in person.
Okay.
I think that's probably been one of the more enjoyable experiences out of this hybrid learning because we still have that interaction with the people on Zoom that we like don't see every day. And then we also have the classroom discussion, which is really enjoyable.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's smart to cut things off virtually for, leave like 15, 20 minutes in class and then just talk to the guys in school. That's meaningful, I think, for you guys who are actually, in person. How about like your math and science classes? I was saying the other day, I haven't really seen the math and science teachers, which is crazy because we usually eat lunch together and hang out and talk about what's going on in that building. What are those classes? What have those classes been like for you?
So my math class is all online. So Mr. Nanendos is staying home for the entire year. So that's been definitely a challenge, I feel like. I mean, a lot of math classes in the past has been just doing work and kind of having a teacher come over to you and kind of show you where you went wrong or do stuff up on the board. So that's kind of been a challenge, I feel like, for math this year. Our classes consist of him using his kind of iPad to write out problems and kind of going through them, and then he kind of sent us off on our own to do some practice problems. So that's been a challenge this year for math. And then for bio, I'm taking AP biology this year with Mr. Fitz, and that has definitely been I think he's been really good and proactive at kind of shifting his teaching from in person to online.
Yeah, he's told me a little bit about that. I think he teaches an online class.
Yeah, so he teaches a GOA, which
Yep.
I think has definitely prepared him well for this transition to online learning. So before, we usually just go into class, he'd throw up a PowerPoint, we'd take notes, kind of go through different sections. But now he's kind of shifted his learning to, he'll post a couple Loom videos. So it's him kind of talking over his presentation. So we'll watch those and then answer some questions. But then he's also been kind of encouraging a lot of group work. So we've done, I think, probably 4 or 5 presentations on the different subjects and chapters we've done this year. And I've really enjoyed that. I mean, we've gone on so many different tangents about biology, and that's been really fun to do some research on different topics. Like we did a COVID topic.
Oh, that's good.
Kind of, so he was able to kind of combine or to pull out what we're learning in the class, relate that to Corona, and then we went out on our own and researched a little bit about that.
That's great. Yeah, the GOA seems like it's working pretty well for him, and he told me something about the way he communicates with you guys. Does he send you emails, or does he use a different platform? Maybe it's just with his GOA course, but
he uses his email. So I think Canvas has like some options to send out like kind of notification emails. So that's what he uses to communicate with us.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's another platform you might use for his GOE. I'll have to get him in here to talk about that. But there's
Is it Remind maybe? Because I know Mr. Hastings uses kind of like Remind, which is this text message thing to send out.
Okay.
Send out some.
Has that been
information.
helpful?
That has been helpful. So
Remind.
He sends out like reminds, like morning, like we have class at 8 a.m. at like 7:45, just to try to wake some people up before class.
Oh, okay.
So that's definitely been a help.
Yeah, I've tried to, for my senior elective, start just a little bit later and give them a little bit more time to sleep in, but I think probably just sleep in like those extra 15 minutes more, so it doesn't really do much. 8 a.m. for seniors is a tough time.
But, it is, but I mean, being at home lets you sleep in a little longer, which is that's probably one of the downsides of coming back to school, having to wake up a little earlier. Yeah, probably one of my only complaint.
For sure. So what are you looking forward to, or school president, rest of the year? Anything you're really looking forward to in a time like this? We have break coming up, but when we get back, we have 4 or 5 more months of school. And as a leader, like anything that we can look to and look forward to in those final months of the year?
I think really I just don't know. I mean, everything's so unknown. I mean, I'd love to be back on. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I look forward to being back on campus. Yeah. I mean, just being able to walk by people in the halls, have conversations with different people, just kind of get back to a feeling of normality and just being able to be on campus and kind of have a normal school year, and just being together. I mean, I think there hasn't been a time this year where the entire senior class has been in one space at one time. So I think that would probably be what I'm looking forward to the most next year.
Yeah, I do miss the assemblies.
I know. Assemblies are always, I mean, coming in, I feel like there's always just a good energy in there.
And you just see everyone, in the same space. That's something that I'm missing too a little bit. But of course, we're looking forward to a lacrosse season, whatever form that might be. I'm pretty optimistic that it will happen, even if it's just a couple games. Even if it's just, boys Latin and Calvert Hall and McDonough or whoever, right? Like, I'm hoping that we can get that going. So
I know that's definitely what I'm really hopeful for that. I think after how successful our soccer season was, I mean, even though we had a few games, we're still able to have some competitive play. And I think we can hopefully with, I don't know if the vaccine is going to change anything in March and in April, but hopefully we'll have some good news going into lacrosse season.
Absolutely. Well, Tucker, it's been a pleasure to discuss all the happenings as a senior. We've been talking about getting you on, so thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Best of luck with everything as the school president. You've got a lot of responsibility, but you're doing a great job. So we'll see you around. Thank you. And when's the swag coming out? I saw that on Instagram. Thank you for reminding me. So I have those. They're in the mail. My dad is in the sportswear business, so he's the guy. He hooks it all up. So has sent that, and if you're looking for a Christmas present, which we all are, I'm scrambling. I need to figure out what to get some people. We do have some Path to Follow, long sleeve, dry fits, and I'm gonna hook you up, obviously, since you came on the podcast. But if not, reach out to me at Path to Follow Pod. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Podbean is like where all the podcasts are housed, and Spotify. So check it out, and thanks for tuning in. Yeah, thanks, guys.